Hey there, welcome. Thanks for joining me. If this is your first time to my channel, my name is Violet, and today I'm going to be sharing with you these adorable wall decors for a nursery room. And it's all about the nursery rhyme books. And what we're going to need today is basically some pictures that you can get at Dollar Tree. Now these are these wall hangings that I purchased at Dollar Tree a while back. And all I'm going to do is simply sand them down just slightly. Now you can use the back side of them if you'd like, but I just didn't want to bother with moving the top where it hangs and stuff like that. So I just decided to lightly sand it down. It doesn't have much glitter, so it didn't take much at all for me to sand them down. Then I went ahead and got some apple barrel khaki color paint and decided to go ahead and paint them that color. Now I did give them 2 coats. Depending on what color you're going to use, I would say at least a good coat, a thick coat of paint, or 2 thinner coats like I'm doing. So just go ahead and do that to both of your pictures, or as many as you want. You can easily make a few of these and maybe even put like their initials of the baby in between each one of these pictures. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. I just thought how adorable is the nursery rhyme books. And I've always loved, you know, Humpty Dumpty and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and all these other nursery rhymes that are so popular, and why not decorate with them? It's a little bit different and more of a different alternative than maybe Winnie the Pooh or something like that. So basically just go ahead and paint both of your signs and allow them to dry. While they're drying, go ahead and print out any kind, again, of pictures that you like, or if you have a book, and go ahead and set those aside. And now what I'm going to do next is grab 2 of these dice, and they come 2 in a pack, and it's just the foam dices that you get at Dollar Tree, and all I'm doing is painting them. Now I do believe there's some larger dices, but these were the ones I had on hand, and I believe they're the smaller ones, if I remember correctly. But no matter what size you get, just go ahead and paint them very, very good. Allow it to dry in between each coat. This was the first time I've ever done anything with these dies, so I learned that you have to give it a pretty good thick coat and allow it to completely dry before you give it a second coat. I don't know if there's any other special way to do that, to paint these, but that's the way I found it easier and for it to stay and be that bright yellow that I wanted. So just go ahead and paint these, again, making sure you allow them to dry in between coats and give them at least a good 2 thick coats. Now here are the printables that I printed, and all I'm going to do is just basically cut them, and I ended up printing 2 to 1 page, so basically it was a 5x7 size. And this one right here, I'm just going to go ahead and trim off all that white trimming. And this one I believe is Little Miss Muffet, so just go ahead and trim it off. Now go ahead and grab a wet towel or a napkin, and what we're going to do is basically rub and off the edges and just allow it to rip a little bit, just to make it look more weathered, more vintage looking. You know, you want that distressed older style look to it if you're going for that. If not, you can just easily leave it the way it is. But again, all I did was just grab a wet napkin. I believe this was a baby wipe that I have, because I typically have baby wipes right next to me just to use them for whatever I need. So just go ahead and grab anything that you have that's wet and just kind of rub off the edges of your page. And you can use all kinds of nursery rhymes depending on what style you want or what you're going for, or who you're going to give it to. So here it is, and you can see how rough edges I made my page look. And all I'm going to do is get some Modge Podge and brush it onto my sign. And I didn't give it a very thick coat, but I just gave it a good coat of Mod Podge on top of my picture, or I'm sorry, on top of my wall decor. And then I'm going to add my printable on top of that. And I just centered it as much as I could, and then all I'm going to do is allow that to dry for a little bit and then put some more Modge Podge on top of that. And it didn't bother me if I had a little bit of wrinkles here and there, as long as you could see the wording and basically know what it is. It really didn't bother me. Again, that just kind of gave it more of that vintage look that I was going for. But just go ahead and add a good amount of Mod Podge on top of your printable, and then allow that to dry. And when you do put Mod Podge on top of your printable, if you did print it out, the colors are going to bleed a little bit, but that, again, that didn't bother me because I was going for that vintage look. So if you want that not to happen, allow the first coat to dry completely and then give that second coat on top of Mod Podge in order for that not to bleed as much. So here I am just doing my second picture. Again, adding some Mod Podge on top of my wall decor. And I was super excited when I thought about doing something like this, because I noticed that not a lot of people do DIYs for nurseries. And I'm kind of curious why, but again, I guess everyone has different ways of thinking. And I just thought, you know, what a great idea of showing different ways of decorating a nursery room, or even a granddaughter's room, or just any kind of area that you want this to, even for a classroom. I think this would be adorable, or a daycare, to have in your little reading area, you know, some wall decor of different nursery rhymes. So here I am. All I'm doing is, again, I printed out some free printables from online, and it's all they are is Humpty Dumpty, and I can't even remember which other ones. I think it was the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and Jack and Jill, I believe it was. Well, I can't remember, but I'll make sure to leave them down below. And what I did was try to print them out as small as possible, and basically it's the wallet size picture. So when you did print them out, I just kind of edited them and made them as small as possible to make sure that they at least fit close to, or if not right on, each one of the sides of my dices. And here I am on each one of these individual squares of my printout. I'm just doing the same thing, kind of distressing all the ends. And then all I'm going to do is make sure it fits, and then again add some Mod Podge to that one side of my dice. Then apply my printable. And what I try to do was print out the nursery rhyme and then print out a picture of that goes with that nursery rhyme, in order for it all to kind of, you know, flow together and make sure that you knew what dice went with what story. So that's just the way I did it, but you can do it so many different ways. So just go ahead and again distress all your corners, add your Mod Podge to your dice, and then add your printable on top of that. Like I told you before, this is the first time that I've actually worked with these dies. I've seen a lot of people work with them and do different things, and they are actually pretty fun to use. So I'm trying to think of different ways to use these, and maybe give you some more DIYs and some more ideas of ways that I'm going to be using these dies. So hopefully I'll come up with some new ways of using them. If you guys have any suggestions, make sure you leave them down below, and I'll be happy to try to do whatever suggestions you have with these dies. So here I am just adding my last one, and I'm saying my last one because I did all 4 sides and then I allowed it to dry, then I did the bottom and top. That way the paper wouldn't rip or anything like that, or get stuck to wherever I placed it to allow it to dry. And then once I decided to do that, I went ahead and added Mod Podge on top of each one of these 4 sides of my dice. So while those were drying, I went ahead and grabbed my wall decor hangings, and then I'm using the antique brown from Waverly chalk paint, and all I did was add a little bit of water, and then I'm just kind of wiping it down to do that dry brush on all the edges of my paper, and also the edges of my actual wood piece as well, or wall decor. Just again to give it more of that vintage look that I was going for. But you can also use black paint, or you can even use white paint to do this part. Basically, it's just your choice of what style you're going for. But I wanted to go ahead and use the brown, since I had used that khaki brown, khaki color for the actual piece itself. So yeah, you can use again black, white, any color really, but this is just the color that I decided to go ahead and use. And I'm just dry brushing it, basically just adding a little bit of paint onto my brush, and then brushing it on all the corners and all the edges of my wall piece. Now make sure right underneath there's like a lip where you're hanging, and all I did was brush that line as well. And this dries so quickly. But before it completely dries, what you can do is just go ahead again and grab a little white wipey or a washcloth, something wet, and just kind of rub it all over where you brushed on that paint, just to kind of give it more of a lighter look, and it's not so harsh and so direct lines. It would kind of smooth things out, but still leave that distressed color there. So again, I'm going to do the same thing to my second picture. What nursery rhyme is your favorite? I know there's so many different ones. Mine's Humpty Dumpty. I've just absolutely love that one. But let me know which one's your favorite, or which one is it that you read most to your children? Or even grandchildren. I know there's a lot of, grandchildren that are growing up with these same nursery rhymes that we did, that, even though there's so many new ones, I'm so glad that there's still, some of us out there that want to read these old ones to them and let them enjoy them as much as we did when we were growing up. So here I'm again just distressing all my corners. And then once you're done, go ahead and get that wet napkin and just wipe everything down until you get it to the color that you like. And there you have it. So now what I decided to do was go ahead and get some jute twine. But before I did that part, I went ahead and grabbed my dice again, and I was going to leave them that way and basically just say they were done. But since I distressed my wall hangings, I said, why not distress my dice as well to make them look more like that older wooden blocks. So what I did was just again grab my brush and just kind of rub off any extra paint that I had on my dice, but also brush on some of that paint as well. So I just tried to do the corners and then just basically wiped it all down. And whatever stuck. One thing I do or wish I would have done, if I would have thought of distressing them before, I would have actually done it, would have made my pictures a little bit bigger, and that way it wouldn't have been as much. But it worked. Once I was done, it worked, and I liked the way they looked. They looked to me like that painted wood block, vintage wood blocks. So I was happy the way they looked. And that's just how it kind of comes out. And again, I just did all of them. And for some reason, I decided not to brush off that extra paint. So it was kind of thick. But it still worked. Again, I just kind of wiped it down as I went. I just did one section, or try to do one section at a time, in order for it not to completely dry and for me to have that time to remove any of that extra paint that I did not want on my dice. But remember, you can paint these any color, pink, white. You can even leave them the color that they are, because once you do add your printable on top of that dice, you're basically covering up all the little circles of the dice. So you really don't even have to paint them if you don't want to. Just make sure that your printables are dark enough to cover that up. But typically they would be. So just go ahead and do it that way if you like the color of the dice they already are. So here I am again, just wiping everything down, making sure that you can still see the lettering of all my little rhymes. And then I'm just gonna figure out which way I want them. And I kind of put one in an angle on top. That way I can wrap some jute twine around them and tie them up together, since they're a decoration and not really gonna be used. But if you don't wanna do it this way, you can even leave them separate or add some real pretty adorable ribbons on top of this. You don't have to use jute twine like I am. You can easily use ribbon or something like that if you want it more girly. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but I just wanted it more of that vintage kind of farmhouse style. So this is the way I decided to do mine. And all I did was wrap some jute twine around the dice and just tie them a little simple bow on top. And since I did that to my dice, I went ahead and grabbed some jute twine and just made a bow on each corner or one of the corners of each one of my pictures. But again, you can add ribbons. I know there's some ribbons that even have the nursery rhyme wording or even pictures on them. So that would be adorable to put on here too, or even some flowers. So there's so many different options. Again, I'm just here to try to inspire you and give you ideas of what I'm doing, and let your imagination run wild and see what you come up with. And if you guys do come up with something different and have an Instagram, don't forget to post me and tag me on your Instagram pictures. I'd love to see your decoration and your version of what you're going to do with these. And this is how they all look together. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to give me a big thumbs up and share with friends and family. It'll truly help my channel grow. Until next time, you guys stay busy, stay blessed, and stay safe. Bye.